This is the start of the podcast with My Pham. You're the creator of VIVI LAVITA, but we were mostly talking about real estate, which was super interesting. And again, I wrote these questions down about 5 minutes before the podcast, so they don't really mean shit. But yeah, so I'm again interested in people who are doing things that they want to be, that are actually interesting for them. And I was talking on my side how that I have a job that's a 40-hour-a-week job, and
don't we all?
I
do too.
Exactly. And we use the job, most of us, in order to pay the bills, and it's something that is necessary in order to live, it seems. But it was something interesting because I had mentioned that most people don't like their jobs and how it affects their health because they're trading time for money, but not only time, they're trading their health, they're trading their happiness.
And their life.
Right. Exactly.
Because money you can always make more. Like
yes.
I said earlier, time you can't get back. So when you're working a full-time job, you're very limited to what you can really do with your life. And a lot of people, I feel like, are very complacent. They just accept it as reality. But for me, I've been very fortunate in the last couple of years, but growing up was a different story. We didn't have a lot of money growing up,
Right.
My family was on like government support.
Really?
So yeah, I was born in Vietnam.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
so I was born in Vietnam. We moved here when I was about 1 year old. My dad was in the military in Vietnam. He was a pilot, and because of the war, we were fortunate to have this program that allowed us to move to the United States.
Yeah.
Because of him serving. And my uncle, I have a couple of family members, like my uncles.
Yeah.
They're also in the military as well. So
in Vietnam?
Yeah. So
Okay.
We escaped communism and we moved to the U.S. and we started with pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
And growing up, we were living on government support. A lot of times I feel like when I hear people talk about what their opinions of people that live off government support, I get it. But from somebody that grew up in something like that, not everybody really wants to be relied on government support forever. I felt like growing up, I kind of understood that, my family didn't have a lot of resources, and that started my humble beginning, I feel like, because our personalities are shaped with our life experiences, the way that we grow up, the people
Sure.
that we meet, how we are brought up really makes a
Oh, yeah.
big impact on
Huge impact.
the way we view our life and just how we deal with certain things. So I think that from my life, I just wanted something more.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier before we started the podcast, I was very fortunate enough to start finances or be exposed to the banking field, finance at a young age. I started banking when I was 18.
Yeah.
And, I started as a teller, I was a banker, and then I got licensed. I got my Series 6, 63 California insurance, and a Series 7 license, and I did mortgages. So being in banking really exposed myself to a lot of really successful individuals, and, I don't think people really have to reinvent the wheel. You just kind of see what other people are doing that is working out for them, and learning from people that you meet, and just exposing yourself to a lot of knowledge. And I think that really changed the way I looked at life, because when you're in banking, you get to see all sorts of people, all sorts of personality, all sorts of class. You get the middle class,
Sure.
the lower class, the upper class, the elite.
Yeah.
So I've been
Elite, damn.
Yeah, the elite. Yeah, you get to meet a lot of successful people, and at this point in my career, that's the type of clients I am most exposed to. So, but from the beginning, I was so scared of being at a job until retirement age. The usual, plan that people have for themselves is you graduate from high school, you go to college, you get a career, you start a family, you retire at 65 or 66 or 67, whatever the age is now, because the age keeps getting increased for whatever the retirement social security is.
Sure.
And maybe that's what most people rely on, is social security that they get to work for, or work, so many years for, and then they get that, and maybe they have a pension, maybe they have 401k, a retirement plan set up, maybe. But that really doesn't have too much control over what really dictates their future. So because of so many things that I want to personally accomplish for myself, which is just being able to live a happy, free life where I don't have to be at a 9-to-5 job for so many years and give up so much of my time to something that doesn't really benefit the environment, the world, my family, myself. So I think that really just sparked the decision to do something more. And that's where my business partner and longtime friend, Roxy, and you know her very well too, we decided to start a brand that not only have a meeting. It took us a long time to really come up with the name. VIVI LAVITA. Originally it was Viva La Vida, but it seems like it's a popular name because when we were going through the process of starting our corporation, I was telling Roxy, if we are going to do something, I want to do it right. So I told her, let's trademark our name. Let's incorporate our business. Let's, do things the right way, like a legitimate business, because if we're not thinking big, we're starting small, but thinking big. And if you're not thinking big, then you already set yourself up for failure because you're already expecting yourself to not be at that caliber, at that level. So when we were going through the trademark process, and we want to be able to get the right people on our team. Sometimes you want to do things yourself, but sometimes, honestly, I think that by hiring the right people, professionals, like having a really good CPA on our team, which we do, and having a trademark attorney to help us with the trademarking process, and just everybody else, like a business specialist or whatever, or a banker on our team, graphic designer, web designer, whatever, that are experts in their field and help us with the business. But when I told her, I was like, let's trademark our name, and that's where we changed the name to VIVI LAVITA, VLV, VIVI LAVITA.
VLV, VIVI LAVITA.
VLV, VIVI LAVITA. And the meaning behind that is just live your life, live the life that you want to live. So, and that's how it really started.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you said you were exposed at a young age to finance, which is very beneficial, very helpful for you. And you think that mostly comes from like your humble beginnings, being born in Vietnam and being raised on government benefits. And you were just like, you know what? I want something more. Yeah,
I just didn't want that type of lifestyle for my kids or my family in the future. I wouldn't go back and change anything because I don't think if I made any changes in the past where I did have a successful family that gave me everything, I don't think I would have the drive or the motivation to do very much.
Makes sense.
Many things in my life. So I'm very grateful for what I currently have and had in the past. And we made the best out of it. And I have two very wonderful parents that didn't have very much, but the amount of love that we got from them and the amount of sacrifice that they had to endure is just more than anything that money can really buy. So I'm very grateful to have a really good set of parents that most people may not have been lucky to have. But going back to my humble beginnings, honestly, when we went to, and Marty and I went to the same high school, we would, and after high school, everybody went their own ways, really. Everybody went their own ways. Maybe you've kept in touch with a couple of people, which I have.
Right.
And I just didn't really have a direction after high school. And I think it's because it's also like I just didn't know. Like, I was so young. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. It's not like I had parents that were doctors and attorneys or whatever that kind of gave me advice from a young age and had the education and the knowledge that pushed me towards a profession at a young age. So anyways, I was in high school, towards the tail end of high school, like senior year and junior high or junior year, I thought I wanted to be in fashion, I took, the ROP programs, and I was like, maybe fashion is for me.
Yeah.
And after a course in fashion design in high school, I was like, their department shut down, and it's not long enough for me to really pursue this. Like, do I really want to go to FITM for like X amount of years and pay this much tuition? I crossed that off my list.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to do the typical thing most people are doing. I'm just going to go to a 2-year degree or go to PCC.
Sure.
Pasadena City College.
Yeah.
And just kind of get started on my credits and figure it out. So anyways, I just went to PCC for like 6 years. Like people
couple years too long.
Yeah, like I was kind of there for way too long. But during that time, I was working in banking. I was a teller. I was a banker. By 23, 24, I was doing mortgages. I was a loan officer. I was helping people, refinance their house. I was helping them purchase their home. And that's where I was starting to really feel like I was getting exposed to finance from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because the 4 years I was in banking, I was just a teller banker. And, even though you really help people with their banking relationship and understanding finance at a different level, mortgage from there kind of opened my eyes a lot more to the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, man, why I'm helping people buy their first homes or their second homes or maybe like one of many that they purchase or refinance. I wonder why don't I?
Yeah.
What about me?
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
Yeah.
So from that moment on, where I'm like, why not me? Why can't I buy my first place?
Sure.
And from that moment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to see how much I can qualify for, how much I need to save for, what income level I need to be at, and I just planned from there. So from being at 23, 24 in mortgage, by 26, that's the first time I was able to say I purchased my first home.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's a modest place. It's not very expensive, but hey, I did it,
Yeah, that's very cool. Congratulations to you.
So
I want to interject. I want to talk about this because we're talking about how people go to college and they come out of college and they're really not financially literate and they have a ton of debt. And this is interesting, right? Because we're talking about like so many people are unhappy with their lives and they're working a 9-to-5 job because they have to pay the bills. But if they didn't have to pay the bills and they wanted to do something that is meaningful to their life, I'm sure a lot more people would be a lot happier, have a lot more energy, be better in health. Because you were talking about, you were able to see a bunch of different clients and you can see the people who are miserable and also you could see the people who are happy.
Yes.
And I don't think it necessarily means that you have to go to college in order to get a degree, in order to get a job, to work for another 40 years of your life in order to retire. Shit seems so played out.
Yeah. And you know what, Marty? I feel like in our type of environment and the generation that we're living in, we have access to so much information, whether you can just search online. There's so many books, so many podcasts at our fingertips, meetup groups, just information everywhere. And if you're not grasping onto this knowledge that are at our fingertips, that our previous generation did not have the resources to,
you're a fool.
Yeah. And then, you're right. Being able to be in banking, I see people that come in every month, their direct deposit from Social Security comes in, and by next month, they're here to take out the whole thing again. That there's no saving, they don't understand credit, how it impacts them, how mortgages work, so they don't even know that, buying a house is even a possibility for them. And not because they don't qualify, it's just because they keep telling themselves limited mindset like things that, I can't, or I shouldn't, or I don't know how, or just giving themselves a bunch of excuses. But in reality, it's just like they just are in such a limited mindset and are so complacent with their lives that they're not making any changes or even plan ahead to how they can really get there.
Yeah. And man, I mean, I get it from their side too, because I mean, they're probably like the mass of people that we're talking about who are experiencing a 9-to-5 job, or it's Social Security or something, and they're have a limited knowledge about different opportunities. They don't have a lot of energy. Maybe they're not, exercising or eating the right things. That's kind of like circle of people that are in the masses, unfortunately.
Right. And it's not just like, to me, it's not just trying to make a massive amount of money or just making money in general. It's making money with a purpose. So, a lot of people don't know a lot about me and my business partner, Roxy. We really truly care about our families and our community and our environment, and just overall, like, just trying to make the world a better place, empowering others to want to do the same. And that's the purpose of me being on this podcast today. Like, I want to be able to just try my best to maybe add value to your podcast, share my knowledge, because I want to be able to be that person that tells people, it's not about being competitive with your neighbor or your friend or this other person. It's about being able to bring people together and share each other's knowledge and empowering each other to really strive for a better just world, to improve yourself and improving others. You're essentially giving back something that maybe somebody else can benefit from, and from that benefit maybe they change their lives, and without you making that slight change or that conversation with that person, you might have impacted their lives significantly.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It's like some people listening right now may hear something that you say and be like, oh, that makes so much sense. Or like, I know back in the high school days, and she's not much different than me. Like, I know her, so if she could do it, then I could do it too.
Exactly. And that's what I say to my friends, and I'm like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I'm not trying to put myself down, but just from the surface, on paper, an immigrant from Vietnam, having a family that have not a lot of resources or wealth to even, like, say I have money from my family to help me start my real estate adventure. No, I had none of that. For somebody that, like, started with nothing, no education, I started PCC. I was there for like 6 years. I have 3 associates in business, social behavior science, and humanity. I wasn't even going for it. I was just there for so long. I earned my 3 associates. I tried to apply to college 3 times. The first time I was getting into mortgage, and I finished my my last class before I transferred, but I got promoted to a different position. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do I'll apply next time. The next time came around, I was like, okay, I'm trying to achieve this new position. I'm just gonna put this on a sideline. But I did apply. I submitted an application. I paid the damn fee. I spent so much money on the application itself, and parking fees that I didn't even show up to go to. And the third time, I was like, okay, this is last year. I was like, okay, I told myself I'm gonna go to college and just knock it out. By the time I applied to college, this is the third time. I went as far as attending or going to attend the orientation. Right before, like, orientation, I received an email saying from the school telling me or reminding me to pay my tuition fees. I'm like, okay, so I have to pay my tuition fees before attending orientation. No problem. I signed on, and I was like, I have to pay $3,000 for 1 semester?
Wow.
I know.
That doesn't make sense for PCC?
No, Cal State LA.
Oh, okay.
For my transfer. But I get it. This topic can be subjective. Some people might say, college will pay off. You'll get a degree, you'll have, more chances in the work field to make X amount of money. But you know what? I don't see the benefit. Like, honestly, if I go to school, I have the resources, I have the money to pay for school, but what if I have the money that I could have paid for school? I could have just used that money for a down payment on a next home, which I did. Which I did.
Hell yeah, girl.
I used that money to invest in the stock market. Yeah. I used that money to buy my second home, my first home, my third home. For somebody, I feel like I'm not that successful yet. Which I like to use that word yet, because you can't really live with a limited mindset. You have to break through that. You have to feel like you can achieve anything you put your mind into with the proper things in place and get things in order, learn what you need to learn to get to your goal. So I don't like to have that limited mindset. So that's why I like to use the word yet when I haven't achieved something.
Yeah.
But like I did the math and I was like, if I went to school, I would have still worked a full-time job because my position, there's no such thing as part-time. Like I have to be present. I have to be there for my clients. I have to be there for my work and support the team. I can't be part-time. So that means that I would have, and mind you, I drive about 45 minutes to an hour each way per day from where I live. So to paint the picture, if I were to go to school at my age right now, and I don't mind disclosing my age, I'm like 29, I would have to wake up in the morning really early to get ready for work, be there by 8:45, get off at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then go to school after work, and maybe get home like really late, 9, 10, I don't know, 11, and still have to make time to study and keep up the grades, keep up my sanity and my just work-life balance,
It's a lot.
And I thought about it and I was like, you know what, I really don't want to live my life like that. And I know it's temporary. I know some people have done it. I know people have made a lot of sacrifice to make that happen. But that's just like a personal decision. I just decided that it's just not for me. I just want to enjoy my life a little bit more. So that's the sacrifice I did. And that just put me in a different path than what I had originally for myself. And originally for myself, I thought I was going to school, then maybe have a different career path after school, but I just didn't really have anything else that really interests me. If I really had a passion for being a doctor or a lawyer or something like a nurse or something, like of course I definitely encourage people to go the traditional education route to pursue those professions because you need education to pursue those professions. But for myself, I don't have the same passion. Ambitions. And like I mentioned earlier, you have to be obsessed with what you want to really scale and to really just make it happen and be successful at it. If you don't have a passion for something, you kind of will do it. Like working out at the gym. I don't have no passion for it. So whenever I've signed up for a gym membership, I've signed up like maybe 3 times. I've signed up for the Costco one where you pay $350 or whatever the amount is up front. You have the 2-year membership. Sure. I've gone 3 times. So because of that lack of passion, the lack of obsession for that interest, you won't do it. You have to be obsessed with what you're interested in. You really have to want to achieve, and you really have to ask yourself why you're doing this. What's your ultimate goal? And when I ask myself why, I want to be successful. I want to be successful so that way my parents, the ones that really had a lot of sacrifices in their lives, that experienced the war in Vietnam, that had had to leave their family, their parents back home in Vietnam to start their lives all over for us, knowing that when they come here to the US, there's nothing in their pockets and they're starting everything over. And a lot of times I know that my parents would be happy, and I'm very grateful for this too, because a lot of parents, especially Asian parents or just parents in general, they want you to go to school, they want you to have a good job, but that's like the plan that they lay out for you. I'm very fortunate that I don't have parents that talk down on me because I didn't choose that route. They never really said, oh, I'm ashamed of you, or I'm disappointed in you that you didn't go to school. And I think I'm very fortunate to have parents that just supported me with whatever decision I decided to do. I wanted to work at a job, I wanted to buy a house, I wanted to start a business, I don't want to go to school, and they were okay with it. Because I didn't have parents that really pushed me to a certain career or whatever, although I knew that they would like just something, they just want me to be happy. So I want to be able to give back. I want to be able to,
that's nice, to
be able to like give them something that something for them to be proud of, and
I'm sure they're proud of you.
But there's I feel like there's more. And who doesn't want to make their parents proud, or whoever they feel that is important in their lives proud of them? But just be able to just give back to your loved ones that sacrifice for you,
Yeah.
and have that why, that really encouraged me to do the things I really do per day.
Yeah. I mean, you do a lot per day. We've known each other since high school, and it's a much different My Pham than in high school. Much different.
Yeah, I'm a very different person from high school.
Yeah.
People grow up, and somewhere from high school until now, I feel like I've discovered myself.
Yeah.
Because there was a time, looking back, I don't think I had a direction. It was more of just waking up, going with the flow,
Yeah.
not having direction, not having a plan. But something triggered between high school and now, between maybe like in my mid 20s, or around that age.
What was it, do you think?
I always think back to that time. I'm not going to say names, but I was with an ex-boyfriend. And if I kind of mention it, I think people can really piece together who it was.
Okay.
But just maybe because I don't
You wanted to say, hey, fuck you. Like, I'm going to do this shit. Like,
well, yeah, kind of. So anyways,
not that
well,
harsh.
no, okay. Well, I don't want to, for me, I don't like to talk bad about people.
yeah.
Or bring people down.
I'm not asking for any of that.
Yeah. I know you're not picking at it. But just to disclose for the listeners, I just want to be able to tell a story where, to have them understand how did I get from this point to point A to point B. So long story short, I had an ex-boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend wasn't the best one for me. But one day he actually invited me, after we already broke up, to a networking event. And I was like, I really don't want to go with him. But at the time, I just decided to. I was the +1. I just showed up to this networking event. At that time, I was like, what the heck is a network event?
Yeah.
For a realtor. He was a realtor, or still is. So I was like, okay, I'll go, whatever. That changed my life. That changed my career. And I think that's the point in my life where that was planting the seed, looking back. Because he invited me to this networking event. We showed up. And it was supposed to be just keeping him company because he had nobody to go with. And I don't know why. Looking back, I was like, why did I go? But I'm glad I did, Things happen for a reason. I showed up, and it was a sponsored event from my job, from the mortgage department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, oh, my work name and mortgage. It's from my same company, but just a different department, just mortgage. So I ended up walking around, and I noticed people with their name tags, and it's my company. I was like, I just, said, hey, I work there too, but just in the retail bank. And that's where I met my friend Robert, the one that I am still friends with, the one that we call each other very frequently and just, talk about life on the way to work sometimes when I'm not listening to my podcast. Actually, I'll be listening to my podcast when he calls. That's when my podcast ends. So
that's cool. And he's like mind, I would imagine.
Yeah, I met him at that event, and maybe a year passed. I was like, my coworker was talking about going into mortgage, and at that time I was in banking for 4 years. And I was like, why don't I just do something different with my life? Maybe I should go into mortgage too. I called Robert up, and I was like, hey, Robert, my coworker was talking about, mortgage. She's applying for it. And do you know who I should talk to? Because he was in the mortgage, obviously, the department when I met him. So he was the first person I thought of when I was interested in moving departments. He was like, me? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just got promoted to a sales manager. I'm hiring people. You want to come on board? Just like
Perfect.
that. He helped me get the position. And from there, I was in mortgage for a couple of years. That exposed me to a lot of different people from there. And then that's when I was helping people buy their first home, refinance their house, buy investment properties and things like that. And I was like, why don't I buy a house? Why not me?
Yeah.
Why do I have to get married first and then
Sure.
buy a house with a significant husband or other or whatever? Why do I have to be older and buy a house? Why can't I do it now? And honestly, the main motivation to purchase home was because I wanted to move out of my parents' house. I was 20 something at that time, like 25, 24. And that's where I manifested it. I was like, I want to move out. I want to buy my house. How can I get there? Not just think about it, but ask myself how. You know, a lot of people I think have such a limited mindset. They want certain things, but they don't plan for it. They don't really think about how they can really do it, or they just tell themselves, I can't, you know? And part of it, I think, really triggers my curiosity is, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts. People mention this book from time to time on almost every podcast I've listened to. You know, they reference the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki. If you read it the first time and it doesn't really interest you, then you're not reading it correctly. You know, the message is clearly there. One of the things that stood out to me in the book is he explains how people have such a limited mindset. They tell themselves, I can't, instead of asking themselves how. Instead of saying, I can't afford it. Ask yourself, how can I afford it?
Right.
That's such a game changer for me. And that's where I kind of related that book back to, okay, if I'm like 20 something at that time, I didn't save a lot very much because, you know, what you focus on is just going to work and going home and hanging out with your friends. You know, I'm in my early 20s. Like, I wasn't thinking very much. But then once I sparked that curiosity and decided on buying my first home, my attention was on buying my first home. How can I get there? How can I afford it? So that's where I decided to go back into the retail bank, and I wanted to become a private banker, which I am today, but it took steps to get there. And I just, you know, I knew the position, what I need to do, how I can develop my skills, my knowledge, and help people with their finances, because, you know, in banking, that's what I do. And by helping others, you know, it would benefit me because I'm learning for myself too. But that's where it started. Is I was just very very lucky to meet somebody from a night that I wasn't even going to be committed to going to.
Yeah.
And from there, I met my really good friend Robert. To this day, we've been friends for like, I think, over 8 years now, almost 10. And you know, I really can't say, I really can say he's helped me quite a bit. Without him bringing me into the mortgage industry,
Sure.
I might have not been too familiar with how loans work, how mortgages work. What the heck is a 7-1 ARM, 5-1 ARM? What is that? You know, like, I want to say my success has been a little bit of luck, but a lot of passion, a lot of dedication, and just meeting the right people and just being aware of the possibilities that are out there, because we live in such a fortunate country. People move here to live here for a reason. Like I said, I was born in Vietnam. When I was 1, we moved here. I went back to Vietnam for the first time 2 years ago, I think. So 20 something years of not being in Vietnam, not being exposed to what real Vietnam is. We went there for 10 days, and it was an eye-opener for me. You know, I could have lived in Vietnam if my parents didn't make the sacrifices for me.
Yeah.
If they didn't make the sacrifices for me, I would have been just in Vietnam and just working a really tough life and tough job. And that's why I really wanted to be able to do something that I can give back to my family, because I know there's a lot of sacrifices.
Right. And so that's why you started VIVI LAVITA. You've been working in the finance industry. You're now doing real estate, or have been investing in real estate for a while. And I like what you said, and we'll wrap up very, very shortly here, but you said start small, but think big.
Start small, think big. And you have to be very obsessed with what you're doing. You have to be obsessed, because if you kind of do it, it's gonna kind of not going to work out for you.
Sure.
So, but of course, anything that you do, any investment that you plan to do, you kind of have to, not kind of have to, but you really have to learn what the pros and cons, the risks that you're exposed to, how to mitigate those risks, what people you need to meet, what people that you need to have on your team. Like CPAs are really important people, attorneys are very important people, and just being able to be knowledgeable. So that way, if you're knowledgeable, you are aware of all the risks involved. And that way you can plan accordingly to limit your risk or reduce the exposure to risk.
Sure.
But have the high potential behind that risk to be able to be successful.
Right. So say for an average person who's not exposed to the financial industry, what would you recommend ways on how to gain that knowledge? You mentioned books, podcasts, things like that.
I think the cool part is the best place to start is really figuring out how you learn. You know, some people are visual learners, some people are audio learners. For me, I'm a little bit of both. And depending on what interests you, like if visual is not your thing, you don't like to read books, physical books, then I would recommend like do audiobooks, podcasts, but just being exposed to that field. If you're interested in real estate, find people in your network, in your group of friends, or people that know people, and pick their brain, because some people might not want to share their best tips and knowledge, but there are some successful people out there that really want to share and just want to give you information and what they have experienced and their best tips and advice for you. But you have to want to know what you want to do first. For me, I have a big interest in real estate. I have a big interest in business and tax. A lot of people just have such a negative perception about tax, paying tax. Like, you know, we are very heavily taxed. If you think about it, right, you make a paycheck, you're heavily taxed by income tax if you work for a W-2 job, like a regular employer like you and I. And if you own a home, you're paying property tax. If you have rental income, then you're paying property tax and you're paying income tax on the revenue that you're making.
Yes.
If you're buying coffee or you're buying stuff,
Taxes.
You're paying sales tax.
Yeah.
So, but when you understand taxes and you learn about taxes and real estate and businesses all collectively as a whole, then you learn all the tax loopholes and how to leverage your investment tools and vehicles that you have, like real estate properties, or how you can leverage your business to mitigate those taxes and reduce it legally. Then you are looking at just making money from a different your perception about taxes is just completely different. But when you don't know, people just typically just complain about the IRS taxing them so much and yada yada yada. But if you really study different things, like how businesses, if you start your own business, which is part of the chapter in Rich Dad Poor Dad, the chapter is called Mind Your Own Business. That's where he talks. It is. That's a pun intended, right? Mind your own business, which is like, you know, start your own business. And that is something that I'm just very happy that I get to check off my list, is just being able to do something. Just do it. It's just like, you know, sometimes people get hesitant about like, should I? Or they want to hear confirmation or validation from their friends or family to tell them, yeah, you should. But a lot of people are not going to tell you that you should. A lot of people are going to put fear in your mind by saying, oh, I know somebody that bought a house and, you know, they lost it because of the market, or you know, the value dropped, or the recession happened, or they invested money in the stock market, it crashed and they lost it all. Yeah, those are true stories. But when you learn the risks and ways to avoid the risk and how to minimize your exposure to risk and learn about all the benefits, and you're exposed to all the knowledge that you should be exposed to, then, you know, when you make your own decisions and not wait for other people's validation to tell you, yeah, you should or shouldn't, then you can make your own best informed decision on your own. Right. You know, so I think that's where a lot of people are having issues, is, you know, they think they can't, or they just want something and they just don't want to learn about it or take time to really know or learn about what they need to do in order to make those goals that they want to achieve happen.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people don't know, like you said, what they want to do, but I think that's the first step. Like you're saying, know what you want to do, become educated about the risks. Talk to people in your network, whether it's your friends, family, or coworkers, on ways to get started in that field, and then take action.
Yeah, and then I'm really glad that you added network in that list, because I think that network is one of the most crucial things that you will need, because within your network, you'd be surprised. Like, there's so many people in your network, right? You just have to find out like who to really have, who you need to have in your network. If you don't have somebody that's familiar with real estate, you should be asking yourself, how can I meet somebody that is familiar with real estate, that can pick their brain and gain knowledge from them? If you want to learn about businesses, then you should have somebody in your network that are business savvy, that have been successful, that you can pick their brain about.
Right.
So it's just, the network is such a big piece. And when you get stuck in a rut, let's say if I get stuck on something and it's a business related issue, and if I'm just bouncing off advice from people that are not in that field, are not familiar with it, and I'm taking their advice, guess what? It may be advice, but it may not be the best advice I could get. So that's why having somebody in your network is so crucial, because that way when you're asking somebody and taking your time out of your busy day to really have that meaningful conversation where you truly need help and you want to be able to get the best advice that you can get, if you have somebody that is knowledgeable in your network, not only that you are able to grow your knowledge, but to have the right advice or the best advice that you can really get from somebody that has done it or has the experience that you're looking for. Sure. And not just your neighbor or your friend that you've known forever. Sometimes it's not, how long you've known somebody. You have to really pick and choose when you're making important financial decisions or business decisions on the right people to give you real good advice. Right.
And then just like final thing that I would like to add is, if you don't have a network like that with anybody, then find a book.
Exactly.
Or find a podcast or find a YouTube video and learn from that, and have those people be your network at first. And then you can find other people who are actually closely interconnected with you, like face to face, to where you could pick the brain.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because before the podcast we were talking about that. We were talking about like how we are in an interesting generation right now where knowledge is at our fingertips. We're exposed to the internet that contains so much information that our parents didn't have access to. There's so many books that have been written about all sorts of topics that you want to be interested in and want to learn more about. There's so many podcasts out there. Yeah. There's no reason for you to not have that information. Mm-hmm. It's just being able to really dedicate that time to find the
stop being a lazy bitch.
Yeah, stop being a bitch. Like there's nobody else to blame but yourself if you're not financially successful. It's not your boss, it's not your employer, it's you, that you're the vehicle of your life. And that's why it goes back to our brand name is VIVI LAVITA. Is like, the true meaning is to really live your life. And the definition of living my life is to be able to be financially free. So that way I don't have a 9-to-5 job. So when my dad's in the ER or my mom's, that she needs me or whatever, I could be there. Right. I don't have to call out. What is vacation days? Every day should feel like a vacation. You shouldn't feel like you have to work for the weekend and be miserable for 5 days out of the week and then enjoy 2 days out of the week. Which,
preach.
Yeah, So I just want to be able to hopefully reach more people on your platform.
Yeah.
To have people look at their lives from a different lens and not just be so limited or have a limited mindset and accept that 9-to-5 job or accept their basic life where they're working and then they'll just have retirement at 60 something years old. Tomorrow is not promised. We don't know if something's going to happen to us. You never know what's going to happen. So just live your life to the fullest, but not just just spend everything you have and just live lavishly, but have a plan, like how you're gonna get there. And that's why maybe on another topic or another podcast we can discuss further on real estate investing or how to generate income, passive income. But ideally, passive income should be the ultimate goal for everybody, because passive income is where you're hands off, you're not physically there, you don't have to be there, you can be traveling, you can be working on a different business or whatever you want to do. But passive income allows you to free up your time and do whatever you want and not have to exchange your time for money for a paycheck.
Okay, that's fantastic. I completely agree with you. And yes, we should do another podcast. We could get into more of the specifics about real estate investment. I'd love that. But for now, let's close on that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Right? Thanks, cool. Marty. I appreciate you inviting me on your podcast.
Of course.
Very happy to be here, and I hope that your followers or people that listen to your podcast can hopefully make an impact change to their lives.
Yeah,
and
that's the goal. That's the goal here on Lucky Brain. All right, so y'all motherfuckers, listen to this shit and take some action. Start small, think big.
Just do it.
Just do it. Make sure you're connecting with the right people, getting the information. It's all out there, right at your fingertips, whether it's through the internet or through books. But like you said, start small, gain some momentum. Momentum is very important, and have that big picture in mind. And with that, we'll close it out.
See you next time.
See you next time. Peace. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.